Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Tuesday, the 22nd of April. That makes this the news for Monday, April 21st, day 1153 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you live from this major European capital currently under siege. And how's everybody doing? There's Little Red Sunflower and Eli are the sponsors of tonight's live. Little Red and Eli, thank them for us. Hey, Chef Deb. Hey, Michael Boucher. Uncle Ricky. Anthony, how you doing? How's everybody tonight? Hey, Bjorn. Sweden is in the house. Sweden is in the house. UK is in the house. Oregon is in the house. New York is in the house. North Carolina is in the house. New Jersey is in the house. The whole world is here. Yorkshire is here. Hey, Bobby. There's San Diego. Green, blue, white. Long time no see. How you been, man? Iceland is here. Denmark. Florida. Florida again. Heroem Slava. Delaware. And Utah. Hey, Mark. West Yorkshire. Not to be confused with Yorkshire, right? Let's not confuse Yorkshire and West Yorkshire. Chattanooga, G2. Reminds me, I made the mistake of mentioning that my uncle was from Windsor, Connecticut, and he immediately corrected me, West Windsor. West Windsor. How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to the Live at 5. We are, of course, just coming out of the 30-hour ceasefire. I mean, what a joke. It's inconceivable to me. The Czech foreign minister really hit the nail on the head. The Czech foreign minister said that the 30-hour Easter ceasefire was nothing but a cheap media stunt. And that's exactly what it was. It was intended to show the people of Russia that the Tsar is merciful, right? Easter, holy day, we no fight. Bullshit. It was intended to show the world that Putin is ready for peace, right? That he's a reasonable person. None of that is true because there was effectively no ceasefire. I published a video today that included still shots of Ukrainian intercept drones taking out Russian attack drones during the ceasefire. There were over 2,900 occurrences of Russian shelling or Russian attacks, 67 assaults. Some of them large mechanized assaults in the Severodonetsk region and down in the Pokrovsk direction, both of which saw large volumes of heavy armor destroyed. 21 BMPs alone in the attack on Pokrovsk. Not to mention the largest number of motorcycles ever seen in a frontline engagement. 96 motorcycles destroyed out of 150. The largest on record attack of the two-wheeled army. Because this is what Russia is reduced to. Russia is reduced to scavenging motorcycles for their men to advance to the contact line on. The ceasefire didn't even last 30 seconds. It was never real, Dark Irish. It was never real. Now, legitimately, hang on. I will say legitimately, there were areas of the front that were quiet. There were areas of the front that were quiet. Quiet enough that the dead could be collected from the field on both sides. Certainly around Toretsk, this was true. In Toretsk, it's a real problem because it's heavy urban fighting, door to door, building to building, street to street. And so it's extremely dangerous to try to bring the dead or wounded in. extremely dangerous for both sides. And in the Tourette's direction and in Donetsk direction and along in other places along the front, it was quiet enough that the troops were able to retrieve their dead. There was that. The other thing that happened this weekend that was good news, really good news, was that 277 Ukrainian POWs were returned home for Easter. That's 277 families that have a loved one back. And some of these guys are Mariupol defenders. They've been in Russian custody for 3 years. And it shows. It shows. The guys coming back don't look great. They're not healthy, they're skinny, they're underfed, they're malnourished. Their wounds haven't been treated right. They've had it rough under the tender mercies of the Russian occupiers. Which is one of the reasons why it makes me crazy when I hear that my own government is pushing the government of Ukraine to cede the temporarily occupied territories to the Russian Federation as a path to peace. Reward the aggressor. Give him the win. You're right about that, Trav. They are lucky to be alive as Russian POWs. They are lucky to be alive and back home where there are people who will love them. Trump is a Russian asset, right? That's why we're hearing this bullshit from our government. Because clearly Trump is a Russian asset. And when I hear them casually talk about leaving 4 million Ukrainians to the tender mercies of the Russian occupation, I ask myself, did these people learn nothing from East Berlin, from East Germany, from the partition of the Germanys, from the partition of the Koreas? Have we learned nothing? It's insanity. It's complete insanity to me. And it shows, boy, in the value of the dollar. Money isn't real. The only thing that's real about money is our faith in it. And if you take all that faith away, your money is worthless. And that's what Donald Trump is doing to the dollar. The dollar is in free fall. Right now, the ruble is the best performing currency in the world. It has regained nearly 22% of its value from its lows. It's a new dawn. It's a new dawn. Zelensky won't sign the land over, will he? It doesn't seem likely. He would face an uprising inside of Ukraine. Public sentiment is strongly against ceding any territories or going through all of this and not getting Crimea back too. So it seems highly unlikely that this deal that the U.S. has worked out with Russia is ever going to pass muster for the Ukrainians. It denies them NATO. It denies them the security guarantees that they need to stay afloat in this world. And it turns 20% of the country over to the aggressor, rewarding Russia. Now, the Russians, for their part, are really doing everything they can to manipulate the Americans into getting back their frozen Russian assets. So they have just pitched to the Americans that they would buy a bunch of Boeing planes using the frozen Russian assets. Now, that kind of a deal is going to be very appealing to Trump. Money that goes into America's pocket, right, for a friend of his, Boeing, who needs his protection because of their recent incompetence. And Russia gets new planes, which they have to have, because the planes they stole at the beginning of the war are breaking down. This is so important to understand. Russian civil aviation does not own its planes. They are Boeings and Airbuses and other manufacturer types, mostly owned by leasing companies in Ireland, which is where these companies are for a number of tax reasons. All those planes that are all those, what is it? Why can't I think of it? Not Euroflot, not Russia Flot, but Euroflot, or whatever it is, the Russian airline. All those planes were simply stolen from the leasing agents at the start of this war. So the Russians stole something close to $500 billion worth of airplanes. Aeroflot, thank you. I couldn't think of Aeroflot to save my life, Nightshade. Or Bobby. Aeroflot, that's what it is. They don't own their planes. So Russia's civil aviation stole those planes from the leasing agents, and then, of course, the manufacturers stopped supplying parts. Now, the Chinese apparently have gotten very good at pumping out clones of the parts, right? So you need a Boeing bolt so the doors don't come off your plane. Okay, the Chinese will clone that bolt for you. And apparently that's how Russian civil aviation is staying in the air. But increasingly, we're seeing stories of planes that have to come down in fields. Planes that there was just a case of a commercial jetliner whose landing gear wouldn't deploy. And so there was a fire in the fuselage as they made an emergency landing with no deployed gear. It's increasingly dangerous to fly in Russian airspace. Not only are the planes falling apart, but they've twice now shot down civil aviation, mistaking it for Ukrainian drones. Yeah, Joe, Dawn, no. You can 3D print stuff if it's interior. Okay, if it's interior, fine, good enough. Anything structural, that's going to be a problem. Yeah. Okay. Well, they're doing okay so far, Anthony. We'll see what happens. Now, Trump is increasingly out of step with reality. Imagine your surprise. Truthing out over the weekend that he expects a deal between Russia and Ukraine in the next week. In the next week. You have, what was the phrase that they used to use? Irreconcilable differences, right? Irreconcilable differences. You have irreconcilable differences between Russia and its maximalist agenda, where it gets everything it wants because it's Russia and it just deserves it, and it's backing it up with its 6,000 nuclear weapons. And Ukraine, who is trying awful hard and who has bent over backwards to make the U.S. feel good, they've even signed the minerals deal. Now, it's not a deal. It's a framework under which a deal could be constructed. And it's a commitment to make that deal happen. That's what they got so far. I read it. I found most of it to be a lot of nonsense. A lot of whereas the U.S. has done so much to help the poor Ukrainians, whereas the Ukrainians owe us so much, whereas Ukraine has no way to pay us. There's a lot of whereases that I think are based on bullshit. Now, this deal, this so-called deal, they've signed a memoranda to say that they're going to make the deal. They go back into negotiations on the 24th. So on Thursday, the U.S. and Ukrainian delegations will meet again, and then they have until the 26th to get the framework signed. That's where we're at right now. James, I don't know enough about the 100-year deal with the UK to say where there's overlap. or where there isn't. Yeah, it's a plan to get a plan, Bobby, is what it is. And I would think that things like other treaty obligations would be of concern, right? And would come into play for these negotiations that are upcoming. One would certainly think that. There was some language in it that was very disturbing to me. Basically, it said that either side can take whatever steps it thinks reasonable to protect its interests. Now, that sounded very much to me like an implied threat of military force on the part of the United States if it didn't get what it wanted. Now, maybe I misread that. Maybe I didn't read it right, but it really stuck out to me as a very weird thing to be in there, the way that it was stated. It had a real vague mafioso kind of intimidation feel to it. It does not feel right, Dark Bamboozler. It does not. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. But it certainly rubbed me the wrong way. And James, I'm with you. I think the best thing the Ukrainians could do is walk away from this deal entirely and tell the U.S. to go fuck themselves. That they don't owe the U.S. $100 billion. This is nonsense. And to make a deal with somebody else. The problem is the U.S. has all the juice. We have all the weapons. We had all the political clout in the world. We had the world reserve currency. Now Trump is eroding all of that before our very eyes. The dollar is in free fall. Our allies are selling off our treasury bill debt in order to further devalue the dollar. Right? And I can't blame them. I can't blame them. Somebody wants to go to economic war with you, remind them you have leverage. You have $300 trillion in our debt, right? Everybody's always talking about the U.S. debt, the U.S. debt, the U.S. debt. China has so much debt. The EU has so much debt. I never take that talk seriously because I understand that what those countries have done is they have made an investment for themselves in the future, right? They have bought U.S. Treasury bills and are holding U.S. dollars as their reserve currency solution. That's good for all of us. That's great for us in the United States. Money isn't real. It's only as real as the faith you put in it. And Donald Trump is destroying the world's faith in the U.S. dollar. And he's doing it on purpose. Make no mistake. He's doing it on purpose. Thank you, James. We love the world, too. Yes, we do. I do hope Ukraine has a trick up its sleeve. Well, Yuri, they don't even really have to have a trick up their sleeve. This is only a framework for a deal, right? Making the deal could take easily, say, 3.5 years. Until the USA comes back to its senses, maybe. Yeesh. Did you see Pete Hegseth is in trouble again? Pete Hegseth had his wife and brother-in-law on a Signal chat where they're texting Yemeni battle plans. I mean, how the fuck? Ethelred, I can't say that your percentage is correct, but it could be. It's probably not far off. The Pope. So if there's anybody here that takes their faith as a Catholic seriously, please accept my condolences at this time. The Pope is dead. For my part, I got to tell you, I look forward to the passing of a Pope. I really do. This is the only time now, these few weeks, where we have somebody, where we're living in a world where there isn't someone who is infallible by divine fiat. He can never make a mistake. Give me a break. So many of those ex cathedra statements issued by the popes over the years have been reversed. So clearly he can make mistakes. He's a person, right? And for the most part, he tends to be a power-hungry bigot in a stupid hat. That's the thing, boss, right? The church has betrayed its people in the bodies of their own children. So how anybody is still a Catholic, I don't understand, right? And I'm Jesuit educated. Jesuit and Immaculate Heart of Mary. How many years of Catholic education did I have? 18 years of Catholic education. And you couldn't get me into a church. No way. Certainly not my children. Anyway, the world is a weird place now that the USA has switched sides. Yes, it certainly is a weirdo world. And the thing, of course, is that the USA hasn't switched sides, just this idiot in charge. You know, I often thought that Trump might be the beast of the apocalypse, but the beast has only a time of 7 years of power. And Trump's had more than that. So I don't think he can be the beast of the apocalypse. Anyway, so the Pope is dead. There'll be another one coming soon. We know that the ceasefire was a joke. Let me give you the stats. A total of 2,900 separate shelling events, right? So just shelling over the border or over the lines. 67 offensive assaults by the Russians, plus another 1,355 Russian attacks with UAVs, missiles, or Grad rockets. I haven't seen China saber-rattling about new hydrogen weapons. So, Mel, I don't know enough about it to speak at any length, but Mel makes the point that there's a new sheriff in town in Ukraine, the Martlet missile. And one of the analysts that I listened to today did a piece on that, saying that it's going to really help the Ukrainians close the skies and get air superiority. But I don't know much about it beyond that, and that was only one guy's opinion. So over the course of this week, I'll take a look at the Martlet and see what I can learn about it and what it's going to do to change things. Now, clearly, the Ukrainians have achieved a new capability with the F-16s. The F-16 is, as I understand it, right, and I'm not a military expert, but this is what I understand. The F-16 is what they call a multi-role fighter. It can do a bunch of different things. One of the things it can do is clear the skies of missiles and drones. And that has been the F-16's mission for its first 10 months in Ukraine. The guys have been getting good at that. They've lost 2 F-16s, though, right? One to friendly fire internally, and the pilot lost. And one to Russian S-400 missiles. The pilot also lost. So they've lost 2 of the F-16s and 2 pilots in 10 months. And in my opinion, the story isn't that they lost 2 jets. The story is it took the Russians 10 months to shoot one down. Just one. 10 months. And in that 10 months, their primary mission of clearing the skies of drones and missiles has been their focus. Now that has changed. November, December, January, February, every day it seemed, we were reporting on a new Russian air defense unit that had been targeted successfully by the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians took out air defense and radars all along the front line. That seems to have made it safer for the F-16s to begin functioning in a new role. Precision airstrikes against ground targets in support of ground troops. A critical part of the air power piece of combined arms maneuvers, as I understand it, right? Not being an expert. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen 22 strikes by F-16s, mostly using JDAM missiles, to take out critical bridges, command and control, drone launch sites, drone operator barracks, troop concentrations, all up and down the front line. 22 critical strikes against high priority targets, including 3 bridges. 3 bridges that have stopped the Russians from being able to advance in Kursk, Belgorod, and down in the Kharkiv region, where that Sumy offensive needs to be stopped. Now, think about this with me. The Ukrainians went into Kursk. They had 1,000 square kilometers of Kursk under their control at one point. Russia freaks out. It sends 78,000 troops into the area to push them out. By the time all is said and done, that's funny. That made me feel lightheaded. By the time all is said and done, we believe there are 62,000 troops left. But the Ukrainians have just a toehold in Kursk. So that big front line has been reduced to almost nothing, and there's 62,000 troops there ready to push through into Sumy Oblast and open a new front inside Ukraine. The Ukrainians are desperate to see this not happen, to preserve Ukrainian civil society, to stop another refugee crisis internally here, to stop another city being destroyed or more cities being destroyed. They don't want those 62,000 to come over the border. What can they do about it? They invaded Belgorod, right? The Ukrainians have a tiny little toehold, about 13 square kilometers, of Belgorod Oblast, Russian territory. Now, I can't imagine that they're going to be there for 8 months the way that they were in Kursk. But right now, they are serving a critical role. The 62,000 up here ready to engage in Sumy are slowly being drained away. Thousands of these guys are being moved to Belgorod. They want to plug that hole before they try coming across the border. If they don't plug that hole, then you're going to have Ukrainians waking up every morning in control of Russian territory for months on end, the way they were in Kursk. And Kursk was a major embarrassment for the Kremlin. So, what did we see this weekend? We saw things in Belgorod and Kursk heat up. There might have been a slowdown along other parts of the line, but not on Russian territory. There was no ceasefire there, that's for sure. In fact, we saw large mechanized assaults. Now, could it be that the Russians were trying to pull a fast one in Belgorod and Kursk? Catch the Ukrainians with their pants down, as one might say, and force them out? Maybe they were. It did not work. The Ukrainians saw them coming, and we saw those large armored columns destroyed, just like the armored columns in Severodonetsk and in Pokrovsk direction. Heavy losses for the Russians in both cases. In fact, in Belgorod, many of the losses happened while the troops were in transit from Kursk. Right now, the Russians are moving thousands of troops from Kursk to Belgorod. They're moving along known routes. Ukrainian aviation came in, the F-16s came in, and did precision strikes against those troops so that they never even reached the contact line. That's the kind of asymmetric advantage that the Ukrainians need to press. Because even though they took out hundreds and hundreds of these guys en route, there are thousands on the way. And pulling as many of them out of there as possible is absolutely going to be critical to ensuring that another new front doesn't open in Sumy. So my hat's off to the Ukrainians and especially to the Russian Freedom Legion. The Russian Freedom Legion, the Russian Volunteer Corps, and the Siberian Brigade, all of whom, it's my understanding, are in Belgorod Oblast, fighting off this orc horde that's on the way to expel them and overrun the country. The Czech Prime Minister made an announcement today that after nearly 60 years, our dependence on Russia has ended. For the first time in history, the Czech Republic is completely supplied by non-Russian oil and fully supplied through Western routes. So the Czech Republic is now free, energy independent of the Russian Federation, as so much of Europe has become. This at a critical time when oil prices are crashing and the Russians can't find new customers. Urals crude, the last I saw it, was trading at $52.71 a barrel, which means it's effectively, if it's going through a pipeline, the Russians are still making some money. The pipelines to China are still open. Other than that, it's got to go by ship. The Russians are now losing money on every barrel of oil they sell because it costs them so much to get it out of the ground, right? And the world supply has gone up and the price is down, especially since Trump's tariffs and a fear of a global recession. Trump's 10% tariffs on all countries except Russia, across the board, mean that the world is about to be plunged into a global recession. Make no mistake. That's what it means. Joe Dawn, I wish I could agree with you. Right, Joe Dawn says here, Trump has once again chosen the wrong deal. He will be ousted. The USA has tech bros to deal with. You're not wrong. Everything you say there, I can understand why you say it. But it is my conviction that Trump's goal is to crash the economy intentionally, destroy the value of the dollar, devalue the dollar internationally, and then him and his billionaire friends, whether they're Americans or whether they're Russians or whether they're Saudis, they will buy it all up for pennies on the dollar. He is getting ready to stage the greatest fire sale in the history of the world. I do think that's what Putin wants Trump to do, and he's doing it. We're watching him do it, Martin. We're watching him single-handedly destroy the greatest engine for creating wealth that the world has ever known, American democracy. Yep, I think you're right, Bip. There's Eli. There's our other sponsor for tonight. Eli and Little Red are our sponsors for tonight. Thank them, please, when you see them. Thanks to Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, and to Lars, who has the Discord server. Now, in addition to the Czech Republic ending its dependence on Russian oil, we also saw something very interesting over the weekend. A bunch of Russian deserters, guys who had already been arrested and were being detained for desertion, attempted basically a prison break. They weren't really in prison. They were in a detention center in Krasnodar Krai, which is spelled with 2 O's. Ugh. Anyway, sorry about that. In Krasnodar, the whole city is locked down because 100 prisoners tried to escape, 100 deserters tried to escape. Now, what these guys' fates are is anybody's guess. I would think that they're either going back to the front on suicide missions or they're going to a gulag, right? Like you would think that's going to be the fate of Russian deserters. Well, these guys were not down for any of that shit. And at least 100 of them attempted to escape. Hit some guards, broke through some fences, whatever. Now, the reports vary, but consistently, now again, we have no way of verifying this, but it appears that maybe as many as 7 actually did manage to escape, and that's what the manhunt is for. Although it's possible 4 of them have already been recaptured. The authorities aren't saying much. There's a lot of rumors going around on Telegram. But the story that keeps coming up is that 7 got out, 4 have been recaptured. A manhunt continues for the other 3. Joe Dawn says everyone needs to wake up to the power of boycotting companies that support Trump. You are not wrong, right? It makes me crazy to think that the America that I know and love, that my America, could stand by and cheer Trump on to YMCA while the Ukrainian genocide goes on, while the Palestinian genocide goes on, while the nightmare of Kim Jong-un goes on. We could stand by for all of this evil in the world. But threaten our 401ks, Trump, and you are out. Like the idea that America has become so selfish, so self-centered, so stupid, so short-sighted, so egotistical, so desperate, so weak, so cowardly. It makes me crazy. It makes me crazy. But if that's what it takes to get rid of him, then America should wake up, because he's about to bankrupt you all. He's a zero-sum player. He believes that for him to win, you have to lose. He's going to bankrupt everybody but himself, his family, and his billionaire gold card American friends. And Renvox, you can't even say that YMCA is the gayest anthem ever written to gay culture anymore, because the guy who wrote it will sue you if you dare say that. A guy who is as queer as a $3 bill wrote the gayest anthem in the world. You can't acknowledge it because gays don't really exist. They're not a real thing, right? The right wants to deny the very existence of these people. Anyway, all right. I got 2 more things here, I think. A couple more things, anyway. So really interesting statistics coming out of the OSINT community, the open source intelligence community. According to them, only 15% of the hardware that Russia's losing on the front today is new. And when I say new, I don't mean it's brand new, but rather it's older hardware that's been refurbished and updated. So this could include even, say, T-54 tanks that have had electronic warfare components bolted onto them. They would fall into the new category, right? Only 15% of what's being destroyed on the front falls into this new or refurbished category. Everything else is old. It's all Soviet stockpiles. And the Soviet stockpiles are nearly empty, at least of anything that you could actually use. The value for our dollar, when I think about the money that the U.S. actually did put into Ukraine, 5% of 2 years, DOD budgets, right? To have seen Russia burn through their Soviet stockpiles for 5% of 2 years of the defense budget in the US. It's the best money we ever spent. I don't know how anybody argues with it. It's the best money we've ever spent. So, Bip, I don't know when Russia's going to collapse. Nobody knows when Russia's going to collapse. Russia has deep pockets. They are insidious bastards. Yes, they are. And they keep finding ways to stay alive. Currency manipulations to improve the value of the currency. Third-party countries to get around sanctions regimes. Getting the Chinese to move their factories into Russia to produce weapons inside of Russia so that they weren't importing weapons. They weren't technically violating the sanctions. They were producing them in Russia for the Russians. All these things. And, of course, the North Koreans. Without the North Koreans, Russia would be done already. Russia could not have kept up this fight the way they have without the North Korean weaponry. All those artillery shells. 5 million North Korean artillery shells, it's estimated, came in. 150 self-propelled howitzers. And the ammunition for them. So, without Kim Jong-un and the mullahs in Iran, Russia would already be finished. Looking at the sovereign wealth fund, at the current rate of expenditure out of that fund, the liquid assets in that fund will be gone within 10 months, 8 months, more like. Why are we not attacking North Korea? We don't generally attack people, Weibo. I mean, I know everybody thinks that's not true, but it's true, right? We have to be attacked first, usually. It sounds like a long video, Yuri. Okay. What else I got? Logs. This is just crazy. So the Ukrainians now are dropping what look like firewood in the fields and woods around the Russians. Now, you're a Russian trying to stay warm at night. You go out, you gather firewood, you build a fire, right? The only thing is these pieces of firewood are not pieces of firewood. They are mines. You pick them up, that's the end of you. They look like fucking pieces of wood, man. It's really something. It's really something. And then, of course, the big news over the weekend, Fox News broadcast church services from Kyiv, Russia. I mean, the people at Fox are so nearsighted, so myopic, so in Russia's camp, that they put it up as Kyiv, Russia, and had it on the screen for 20 minutes before they fixed it. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's such a joke. It's such a joke. Fucking Fox News. Anyway, all right, that's it for me. That's the top line news for the day. Questions, comments, points of observation. Big thanks to Eli and Lil Red, who are the sponsors of tonight's live. Big thanks to Blue Star 6, who increased her Patreon membership this week, as did our buddy G2. Thank you both very much. If you're not a Patreon member, please consider becoming one. If you can kick me $5 a month, that would make a difference in my life. As would sponsoring a live. We had live sponsors tonight, but I don't have any for the rest of the week. If anybody's interested in sponsoring a live, the PayPal is in the description. My vacation was tremendous, actually. It was very pleasant. And I had the distinct opportunity to spend 2 days, 2 full days traveling by bus across Europe. Now, I don't really recommend it for anyone, but for me, it was very insightful. Leaving Kyiv, the goodbyes were all very teary. They were sad goodbyes. They were the goodbyes of families torn apart without their consent. When I got to Berlin, I couldn't help noticing the extraordinary difference. The goodbyes were all happy goodbyes. Have a great trip. See you soon. The makeup of the people on the bus was completely different between Kyiv and Berlin. On the trip from Kyiv to Berlin, the men on the bus were outnumbered by women 6-1. 6-1. By the time we got to Berlin, it was a normal 50-50 ratio. In Kyiv, everybody's Ukrainian. A few internationals. Very few. You get to Berlin, all of a sudden, you're in a multicultural democracy again, and everybody's getting on the bus. Every creed, every color, every group is there. And so the isolation, the lack of choice, the martial law that keeps the men in the country and prevents their travel outside the country, the stark contrasts between a healthy multicultural democracy at peace in Germany and an emergent, hopeful multicultural democracy at war was startling and vivid to me in a way that I had not anticipated. I'm really glad that I'm so ignorant that I can't tell the difference between Russian and Ukrainian. Because there were some people that got on the bus in Berlin who were such assholes. And I like to think they were Russian, but I don't really know. Oh, yeah. It's hard to say. Hard to say. All right, we got 10 minutes, guys. What else? So yeah, if anybody can help me out and sponsor a live, PayPal's in the description. What was the Dutch sentiment on Ukraine? Well, Bobby, that was the other thing that was really striking about my week away. How easy it is when you're outside Ukraine to turn the war off. You just turn it off, and it doesn't exist anymore. The 3 days that I was in the Netherlands, if I had not brought it up, I would have seen no mention of the war on any screen that I saw. I would have heard no mention of the war from any person I spoke with. It just, you can turn it off. And on that point, I'd like to kind of acknowledge everybody that's here. You have chosen not to turn it off. Just by tuning in here to talk about it with me, you're making a conscious effort to engage in what is likely the single most important geopolitical happening of our lives. I firmly believe that. And all of you have chosen to tune in rather than to tune it out. Now, of course, as a believer in Ukraine, when I was in the Netherlands, I was meeting with people who are also believers in Ukraine, people who come here to volunteer, right? Like my buddy Martin and Lart, who put me up in his apartment. Those guys understand what's happening here. And so our discussions were very positive, very pro-Ukraine. In fact, Lart and Martin both took some actions here, or are planning on taking some actions here in Ukraine based on our discussions. So that makes me feel good, right? Because one of the purposes of this channel is to synergize people who have an interest in helping Ukraine, putting them together with people in Ukraine that they can actually help. And so being able to do some of that is very humbling for me. Ukraine is defending Western Europe. Yes, they are. They're defending all democracies as far as I'm concerned. It is the same way in every country, championess, right? Because that's normal. Most people are so busy with their own lives, it's hard to see past their own dinner table. That's being human, right? I get it. And it's why I think it's important to call out all of you and to congratulate all of you on making the difficult decision to tune in, to face the horror and the humanity of this conflict. Night, Mel. Congratulations. Have fun tomorrow. Hey, Weebo. How you doing, buddy? Do I look drained, Renvox? Do I look like I'm exhausted? I'm just old and tired. Old and tired. It is strange to be the same age as old people. Can't quite get the hang of it. It's just Monday, Pete. It's not just Monday, it's Holy Monday. Ooh. Fuck yeah. Fitz, you're going to get me banned again for nothing. For things that we would not think of as anything. Still 22 inside. Yeah, that is the problem. My knees know I'm not. Ha ha ha. I got my father's knees. There's no doubt about that. Happy anniversary. How nice. Everybody congratulate Dark Bamboos on 45 years of marital bliss. Yeah, it's a simple comment. Nothing about you is simple. A broken heart ages us so, and my heart has been broken many times. Hey, Sammy. Hey, Margaret Fuller, how you doing? Tommy's waiting for a new... Anthony Tommy Tom is waiting for a new knee. "33 years, happily single, Bobby." Nice. Nice, nice, nice. Oh. All right, we got 4 minutes left. Anything else on Ukraine? Who's got anything on Ukraine? We all understand this Easter ceasefire was nothing but a publicity stunt. There was no real ceasefire. Yada, yada, yada. Things continue. They're going to close the bridge, the Kerch Bridge, for 48 hours. That's going to be over the May Day parade, or the Victory Day parade, the May 9th. So that's interesting that they're officially closing the bridge for 48 hours around the May 9th parade. JD brought the message to Pope, "Our president wants to rename the Holy See to Trump Ocean. That's what killed him." Okay, first of all, F and hell, that's the Holy See, S-E-E, not S-E-A. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing is, I just think meeting J.D. Vance is enough to kill anybody. Anybody with a normal moral compass, at least. Dark Irish, you have a 28-year-old? Holy shit, dude, you started young. Up. I don't know if you can hear it, but the air alarms are sounding here in Kyiv. So it looks like we got something incoming. Yeah. Well, on that note, I think I'll call it a night. Guys, for everybody who supports the Patreon, thank you. I literally could not do this without you. Big thanks to Lil Red Sunflower and to Eli, the sponsors of tonight's live. Those live sponsorships are really important for me to be able to pay the rent here. So if anybody can sponsor this week, the PayPal is in the description. That's the sound of a Russian ceasefire, Bernard. That's exactly what that is. Thanks, the kid. Yep, Shahhead's incoming. All right. Calling it a night, kids. Thank you very much. Take care.